Hello guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Jay Helmstein here. Today I'm going to do the wrap up and the shooting impressions of the Beretta PX4 Storm Compact. Now, I typically do these out at the range when I'm talking about shooting impressions of a gun. However, today it's extremely windy and it's about 22 degrees outside. So I'd probably be mumbling and stumbling and I have a runny nose and you probably wouldn't be able to hear me anyway. So because of that, doing this one indoors. So, overall verdict of the PX4 Storm: it is not my cup of tea. Okay, that's pretty much what it is in a nutshell. There are people out there that love these guns, there are people out there that shoot these guns very well. I am just not one of them. Okay, so I'll kind of get into some of those nuances here in just a moment and what I found when I shot this gun. When I first reviewed the gun, I was impressed with the build quality, and I'm still really impressed with the build quality. As you can see, this has got about 250 rounds through it right now, and really there's no noticeable wear at all. It still looks brand new. Everything's nicely finished. It's just nicely put together. I don't have any rattling or anything crazy going on. It feels like a really solidly built gun. Now, with that said, some of the things I noticed while shooting it: as far as the sights go, I really kind of applauded the width of this rear sight because I really prefer kind of a wider rear notch there. What I found when shooting it is they're very imprecise. So there's so much room in there that the front sight kind of fishes around, and I have difficulty really putting some accurate shots down unless I take the time to get the alignment just perfect there. So you know, with sight radius this short, maybe just a little bit too much notch in there. And as you know, if you've looked at these, there really aren't a whole lot of options for aftermarket sights. There are a few by Ameriglow that were commissioned by Beretta that are sold on the Beretta website and so forth, but as of right now, not a whole lot of other options to change that out. So something I noticed while shooting it. Now, everybody touts the recoil control of this gun, and I will say it is a different feeling gun to shoot. Now, we kind of need to get into terminology because there's a difference between recoil and muzzle flip. And what I've noticed with this gun is it has a significantly reduced muzzle flip. It's not necessarily a light recoiling gun. So I attribute a few factors to that. On the low muzzle flip, obviously there's a lot of weight in this slide and there's a lot of weight out far over the barrel. Also, people talk about the radial design of this rotating barrel taking some of that energy out. That might have something to do with it, but I think probably more than that is the fact that the barrel doesn't tilt, so that recoil is coming straight back and it's not inducing that flip nature of the muzzle to begin with. So on that aspect, it does have less muzzle flip than you'd expect out of a gun this size. Is it completely noticeable, like, wow, this is a 22 of a gun? Not really, but it is a really different recoil impulse than you'd expect out of a smaller size gun like this. Now, you still do feel recoil, and the polymer, in my opinion, is not great at absorbing that recoil. It's just a really hard plasticky sort of polymer, and it kind of transfers quite a bit of that into a fairly sharp shock wave into your hand. Now, it's nothing that you're going to notice or complain about or anything like that, but in the colder weather, I could kind of tell a difference between this polymer and some of the more rubbery polymers out there when I shot these guns back to back, you know, with other polymer handguns. So with that said, the other thing you're going to suffer is the barrel is extremely short in this. So the slide, pretty normal size for a compact size gun. However, the barrel, as you can see, the ejection port is way up here, and this is all chamber. So you're probably talking maybe a 2-inch barrel or so. I don't know the exact numbers there, but it's a very short barrel, and because of the barrel length being that short, the powder doesn't have enough time to burn in the barrel, so you are getting a lot of, not really flash, but you're getting a lot of that feedback and that impulse happening in front of the gun. So because of that, it is a gun that's going to recoil, and again, not bad or anything, and it's got a different sort of recoil impulse, so it is very manageable. But don't be confused. You know, people say that these guns don't recoil. They definitely do recoil. They just don't have a tendency to rise and muzzle flip like you would expect out of a gun this size with a barrel this short. So, you know, kind of a mixed bag there. It's worth shooting just to feel. So if you know somebody that has one of these, it's worth shooting to feel. Something else I'm going to point out about: I had a real difficult time feeling confident with this gun, and there are two reasons for that. Aside from the sight issue, there'd be a couple times where I would shoot this gun, and I know for sure in that split second that the sights were lined up enough to make a shot that's going to at least ring steel. And I'd shoot it and hear nothing, and I'd be like, how did that happen, right? So a couple things going on that I've kind of been able to deduce. First is, again, this barrel, the slide length being fairly short. You've got to really be precise when you aim this gun, because any little movement here, there, or yonder is going to really throw that off as far as the trajectory is concerned of the bullet, because obviously you have less length to deal with when you're making your aims and your shots and whatnot. So just some basic trigonometry at work there with the short slide, short barrel length. The other thing is the polymer on this is very, very slick in nature, especially when it got cold out. I was having a really difficult time getting a good grip on the gun. So I would find that sometimes I couldn't grip it consistently. Sometimes I'd have it cocked a little this way, sometimes maybe this way, and I was really just kind of fishing for that really, really firm, solid grip that I'm used to on today's polymer pistols, and I just couldn't get it out of this gun. So, you know, if I try to shoot fast, the gun might shift a little bit, and even though my sights looked lined up, it might be off just enough to kind of throw those bullets. So, again, something that I noticed while shooting it. Now, I'm going to talk next about something that's very rarely mentioned, and it has to do with the balance of the gun. So, people talk a lot about pointability of the gun, and they'll talk about the grip and the angle of the grip and whatnot, and this is a very up and down grip. It's probably more so than basically anything else out there that I've handled. You don't really notice it because the ergonomics are really good, but it is a very up and down grip. Now, I'm not talking really about pointability when I make this complaint. I'm talking more about how the gun wields in your hand. So how easy it is to transition target to target to target, or to transition from a low ready or a holstered position to target. That is basically how the gun wields, and it has to do with more of the balance and whatnot, and not necessarily how pointable it is, to use a more common term. So when I talk about how to wield this gun, it's just a kind of ungangly experience. There's a lot of weight in this slide, and it's a very kind of short, pudgy sort of gun. So as I pulled it out, I would find that, you know, I've got a lot of weight to kind of muscle on target, especially if I'm transitioning. And to keep that front sight locked where I want it, it takes a lot of effort, or at least it did for me. So for me, the gun balance is just kind of, it's off. Now, it's not something that I would, you know, really make a knock against the gun and say it's completely terrible or whatnot, but it's something you'd have to train out of, and it's something very unique to this gun, and it's very unique in the fact that you'd have to do a lot of time and a lot of training just on this platform to be able to engage multiple targets quickly, or to be able to engage from a self-defense position where it's probably going to be holstered, and hopefully it's going to be holstered in an inconspicuous manner, maybe in the waistband or something. So in that aspect, I just really never got confident with the gun, the way it pointed, the way it just kind of felt while transitioning targets, the amount of muzzle movement that I would kind of induce out of it, the kind of not so hot grip that I would get on it. Those are the kind of reasons that I was kind of starting to shy away from the gun to begin with. And to kind of top it off, I guess icing on the cake, we'll talk next about malfunctions. I had 3 malfunctions with this gun out of 250 rounds. They're all 3 different malfunctions, which doesn't really bode well for me. If I have a gun that has 3 malfunctions out of 250, but they're all very similar in nature, that's a little bit more calming to me, because I can figure out what that problem is and kind of chase it down. When I have 3 malfunctions that are completely different in nature, I kind of start to worry about the gun itself, the platform, things like that. Maybe they're just bugs that need worked out. Maybe the gun just needs cycled for a few hundred rounds to get those bugs out, you know, broken in, whatever you want to say. But a lot of people nowadays will say there's no reason to break in a gun. If it doesn't work out of the box, you shouldn't bet your life on it. So with that said, the 3 malfunctions I had, the first one was within the first 2 magazines, I had an issue where the bullet didn't feed up into the chamber. So the chamber in this is kind of, there's a very, very small ramp because it's a rotating barrel. And as opposed to some that feed directly into the barrel, like, the Beretta 92 series, it basically rams right into the barrel. This one has a little bit of a travel. So it's kind of using the inner frame here, that little ramp on the frame there, and also a little bit of the throat of the barrel itself to feed that bullet up in there. And what I had happen was one of the bullets was kind of stuck like this. Now, it didn't double feed or anything, but the slide kind of locked half in and half out of battery like this, with a bullet just kind of lodged up in there. So, you know, obviously corrective action at that point, just smacked the back of the slide. It went into battery, everything worked okay. Not a super big deal. Wasn't really too alarmed at that point. So fast forward maybe another 50 rounds or so later, the issue that I had at that point was one that I still haven't been able to diagnose. And that was that and this is all factory ammunition, by the way. I think you use Cellar and Beloit and Blazer brass. So out of this 250 rounds, about maybe another 50 rounds into it at this point, I had a round go off, and I went to pull the next round, and it was on a dead chamber. So it just clicked, and I thought, that's kind of weird, what's going on? So I pulled it again. Being a hammer-fired gun, you can do that, right? You can hopefully have a second shot at sending that round off if it's a light primer strike. Clicked again, performed remedial action, dropped the magazine, racked the slide back and looked in there, and the chamber was empty. So the round went off, the casing was ejected, however another casing wasn't loaded in there. It's almost as if the feed ramp, or the feed notch for the slide, went directly over the bullet and just back in the battery without pulling it out of the magazine and up into it. Could be a magazine issue, could be a light spring, could have been a kink spring in there in the magazine. I don't really know, but that's one of the ones that I haven't been able to diagnose. So it was on a dead chamber during a normal battery with plenty of rounds left in the magazine and whatnot. So that's malfunction number 2. Malfunction number 3 happened at about the 200 round mark, and this is just shooter induced, but these paddle style slide releases on both sides, that's why I say it plural. I was shooting, and at some point, probably trying to figure out how to get a really nice solid grip on this gun, I must have slid my palm up just a little bit, or maybe it slid on this really slick surface here. But at either rate, during the middle of a rapid fire string, I was able to lock the slide open with my hand. So inadvertently locked the slide open. Again, that's a shooter malfunction. That's not necessarily a fault of the gun, but it did happen. So something to note, you know, if, issues like that or things obviously to take into consideration. Can they be trained out? Sure. I'm sure if I put a lot of rounds in this gun and I knew, you know, developed ways to put my hands around it, it wouldn't be an issue. However, things like that in rapid fire where you're locking the slide open and things like that are definitely warning flags to me as far as using this as a self-defense gun. Now again, particular to me as a shooter, absolutely. However, I'm just making a note of it because other people may have a high grip like I do. You know, with that said, the other 2 malfunctions, I really don't know what to attribute those to. I don't see anything in here that needs lubricated. I don't see anything in here that, you know, has some kind of funky notch on it or isn't finished. Obviously, the magazines, they've got a nice spring pressure to them. They don't seem to lock or stick or anything. So I don't really know what to attribute those to other than just growing pains with the gun, which again is not super confidence inspiring. So overall for me, this bad boy is going on down the pike. I'm not saying it's a bad gun. I'm just saying that it's not for me. And I think that's maybe what a lot of people are starting to feel as they shoot this gun. It's not close enough to the Beretta 92 to really make me feel like the time I spend on this translates directly to the amount of time I need to spend on the M9 to keep polished in that aspect with my competitive Army shooting. And I don't feel like it's a confident enough gun for me just to carry around and just to kind of defend myself with if I need to, at least for me. Now, there might be some people out there that are really, you know, akin to this style gun or the way the grip is or something like that. Probably not a problem for them. And again, this is going to be one of those guns that if you start out on this platform and you get good on this platform, you're probably going to be fine. Last thing I'm going to talk about is accuracy with this gun. And probably for the reasons I mentioned before, super short barrel, my lack of confidence in the grip and whatnot, I was not able to get any super duper tight groups with this gun. So at 25 meters, 25 yards-ish, at an indoor range, under fairly rapid fire for that distance, my spread was probably about 2 feet with 5 shots, and I think 5 shots in 10 seconds, something like that. Now, if you compare that, you know, it's not bad. Combat effective, yeah, I could hit a target at 25, you know, meters, yards, whatever with this, no problem. However, you know, I was shooting this back to back with my new SIG carry, SIG X carry, and with that gun, I was able to, in the same time period, shoot a fist-sized group at 25 yards, 25 meters. I can't remember how far the indoor range goes, but you know, that's just kind of comparison's sake, right? So if you're talking about where I am as a shooter and what I prefer more, obviously this is going to be one of those guns that is just not on my top 10 list. And it's just, you know, probably just for me. I don't think there's anything inherently inaccurate about this gun, but it's just not easy for me to shoot super accurately. So again, would I carry this gun? No, for those reasons alone, right? And you know, just as kind of a final wrap up with the gun, I think it's a neat gun, and I kind of think, you know, I really wanted to like this gun. I wanted to appreciate it. I wanted to see what all the fanfare was about, and you know, it's got a cult following, and I kind of I'm starting to see why it does. You know, it is a fun gun to shoot, and I'm sure it can be shot well. However, you just have to focus on this platform and this platform alone. It is so unique. I mean, it's the quintessential Italian gun. It's just unique, and it's designed very originally, and there's a lot of attention to aesthetics and things like that, and it's got kind of a mystique about it. But as far as being, you know, a gun that I could just throw in the mix and be very confident with, I'm just not there with it. As far as upgrades go, I did end up adding the reduced poundage spring, which is called the D spring on the Beretta website, and that didn't drop the weight significantly for me. But right now, it's probably the lightest factory style double action trigger I have. It's very easy to pull, and it's got a very nice, you know, crisp break at full extension there. It also obviously dropped the single action, and that is extremely light at this point. So kind of neat thing that you can just throw a spring in there and have basically a gun that feels like it's had a full action job done to it. I also tried the Talon grips. And I think Beretta knows it's got a problem with this grip here, because Beretta sells Talon grips factory direct, you know, from the Beretta website. And you'll see some of these guns that come out, like the Langdon edition compact carry, comes with those Talon grips. To me, Beretta, if you know you have a problem, you know this is a complaint, fix the grip. You know, even if you're just making a Gen 2 or you're making a special edition run, fix the texture on this grip. It's super slick, and it's just not confidence inspiring. The Talon grips did help, but I'm not a big fan of putting stick-ons on the grip, because those things can fail, they can wear out, and you know, the worst times they can start rolling off and peeling and things like that. So as far as a carry gun goes, I don't like to have that kind of stuff on my grip. Just me personally. So another little tidbit of information there that, you know, that's just where I come from as far as those grips are concerned. Can it be remedied? Yeah, sure, put the grips on there, but I don't really like to use them, especially on a carry gun. So all in all, decent gun, just not for me. I really enjoyed my time shooting it. I enjoyed the recommendation for those of you that recommended me having it. And again, this is for the compact size. Subcompact, those issues I talked about would probably be exacerbated. I'd probably like that even less. The full size, some of this issue with the barrel, maybe even the pointability and whatnot, would be worked out. Obviously, the grip is still going to be an issue, but some of these things, maybe the longer grip length, that might help it a little bit. I don't know. So again, this is for the compact PX4 Storm, not necessarily the full size. I've never handled one. So take it for what it's worth. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate your suggestions, likes, comments. Keep it up, and I will keep coming at you guys. I got a lot on the table, so I've got a lot more to bring out and show you guys in the upcoming months. Stay tuned. I appreciate it. Have a great day.